Welcome to Ink and Magic, a podcast where we read and discuss the writing craft, world building, and romance of paranormal and fantasy novels.
If you love books with bite, set in worlds of magic and mayhem, then you're in the right place. My name's Nikisha Shanae. I go by Ines.
And I'm Leslie. I write as Elle Penelope. And welcome to the show.
Hey, Leslie.
Hey, Inez. We are back with another special celebrity guest episode of Ink and Magic. And our celebrity guest this week is Kimberly Lemming. Welcome, Kim.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So if you don't know, Kimberly Lemming is a fabulous fantasy author who is on an eternal quest to avoid her calling as a main character. She can be found giving the slip to that new werewolf that just blew into town and refusing to make eye contact with the prince of a far-off land. Dodging aliens looking for earth booty can really take up a girl's time. But when she's not running from fate, she can be found writing diverse fantasy romance or just shoveling chocolate in her maw until she passes out on the couch, as you do. Very relatable. Welcome so much. Thank you so much for coming. And thanks for writing your amazing books, which have been superstar books. And we're going to dive into it all, dive into the fantasy romance comedy of it all.
Let's do it.
Cool. So first book is, I always get the name wrong. Hold on.
That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon.
Yes. First of the Mead Mishaps series. So our listeners very well might be very familiar with these books. I wanted to ask you the first question. Where did the idea for this Mead Mishaps series come from in that first book?
Well, it was kind of funny. I was talking to my friend Alexis about how hilarious it would be if like an NPC, like a non-playable character from a video game suddenly became the main character. And like maybe it was because they did something stupid like dye their hair pink. And like even though they just want to farm their potatoes and do their thing, one day they wake up and somebody else is in their shop saying their lines and suddenly a sword is in their hands. They're asked to go on this quest and how pissed off she would be. And the idea was just so funny to me that when I decided to quit my job and be like, I'm going to be a romance novelist now, I was just like, let's just do that. And so I just started writing whatever came to mind of like the most ridiculous adventure I could think of and just had so much fun with it. And yeah, it just spiraled out of control from there.
I have so many questions.
All right, we're like, psh, our minds are blown.
Yes, mind blown. Because I was totally assuming that you were going to say, "Oh, I went to a Renaissance fair, and that's how it came about." But it's gaming.
It's gaming, yeah. It's sort of gaming coded.
Have you ever been to a Renaissance fair?
Oh yeah, I love the Renaissance fair. I'm a huge nerd, but yeah, that whole thing came out of just like, what if this reluctant hero was forced to go on this quest with like a clearly fantasy novel type dude, and she's just like, God, he's so pretty, but I really don't want to be here.
Yeah, it takes the idea of like the debate section of like the whole save the cat thing to the next level. We do a lot of structure, and we're both plotters, Inez and I, so we speak in Save the Cat and like different like plotting structure languages, but like the whole thing, that's true. It's a book about someone who does not want to go on a quest, and often in these situations they accept it and they're like, okay, fine. But I mean, your main character accepts it, Cinnamon, but like she's never really fine with it.
No, she's like, just to be clear, I'm gonna save you, but if you give me any crap, I will leave because again, I don't want to be here.
And it's refreshing. Yeah, totally.
So you said that again, all the questions. You said that you quit your job. What was your job?
I was working as an electrician's apprentice because before that, I was a technical artist making casino games. But at the start of COVID, the company pretty much fired everyone I liked working with. And I'm like, well, if I'm going to be miserable and making less money, I may as well go somewhere else and make more money, even if it's not what my degree is in. But turns out I hate construction work. I hate it so much. The men are gross. The work is gross. And so then I was miserable. My husband was just like, why don't you just quit and like chill for a little bit? I'll take care of the bills. You just take some R&R and then figure out what you want to do. Yes, that's my man.
We're all explaining.
Because I've never actually had a break in my adult life, I felt completely useless by the third day. It was just like, I'm going to write a book. And so that was just like, I'm a romance novelist now. This is what I do. And so I set a schedule and sat in my chair at like 9 a.m. every day and wrote no less than like 1,000 words for like 2 months. And by the end of it, I had That Time I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon.
Mind blown.
I know, like the emoji is just over our heads constantly right now. That's the most fantastic origin story I've ever heard, honestly.
And
Like,
she already had a
Thank you.
hero to model everything after. That's not
Yes.
fair.
that is so
Not fair.
cool. So
So
had
were
you
you a romance reader before?
Oh yeah, I've
When-
always loved romance novels. Like
Okay.
fantasy, romance, anime, all that other stuff.
and had you like written like in school? Like were you always writing stories and stuff?
Sort of. I used to write a bunch of comic books and just like share them with my friends and stuff. And before this, I wrote just like a few, maybe 7K shorts, but it was never a lot. And I never tried to write like a full on novel. So this was sort of like a fun challenge because I just needed something to do. Like I was depressed, I needed to laugh. So I'm just like, I'm going to write a full book and we'll see what happens. Had no expectations for what the book was actually going to be. So when it took off, initially I was like, oh, that's so cool. Fuck, I have to figure out more books.
Wow. So when you sat down after you'd done these shorts, when you sat down to write this novel, did you plot it out?
Oh
or did
God,
you just
no.
fly by the seat, you flew by the seat of your pants?
I had a basic concept and I just rolled with it. I'm not saying that's the best way to do a book, but that's just worked for me at the time. I have not been able to recreate that magic yet, but I still love writing my books. Like each one of them is so much fun for me, but they take a lot longer. And I find myself actually having to figuring out the plot beforehand.
Yeah, the first one sometimes can be like that unicorn. Like the first draft of my first book, I wrote in 2 days. It was just like this gush of
Wow.
inspiration. It was 10,000 words one day, 11,000 words the next day, and that was the first draft. And I was like, wow, there was a beginning, middle, and end technically. And then I spent like 8 months editing it and like fixing
Fair.
it. But yeah, those books, it was sort of like a gift where you get that just gush, or you just, even if it doesn't take that short a period of time, like sometimes when you don't know what you don't know,
Mhm.
and you're just out there, nobody cares, it's just you, like nobody knows what you're doing necessarily. There's a lot of freedom and joy in that, I think.
Yeah, it's like a magical experience.
Totally. So, like in terms of the world building and all the different kinds of demons, was it just the first thing that came to mind, or how did you go about creating this world?
Yeah, so here's the thing. I am kind of lazy and didn't want to figure out real life events that were actually in history. So I decided to make up a fantasy world where I could do whatever I wanted. And then I was just like, well, I've never lived in Europe. I don't know why I would make it European. So I set it in the bayou instead because that was way
I
more
was
fun and there was
wondering.
alligators.
Nice.
Well, I've lived in a lot of different places in the US because I grew up as an army brat. So even though I haven't lived in the South my whole life, like I'm familiar with it, gators happen. It's a thing. So I was just like, well, wouldn't it be so much more fun if it was like a fantasy world based, like in the American South? Like that would be so much more fun than the constant European stuff we're seeing now.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, because it can tell it's the bayou and it is a different setting. And then, of course, there's all of the sort of anachronisms and the modern things because it is in the past. Like they don't have cars and stuff,
Mhm.
but they are very modern in their perspective. Was that just a thing that you thought was funny, or how did you think about that?
Well, I thought it was funny. And two, I think we also get stuck up with how we think fantasy characters should talk. Because keep in mind, slang has always existed. We don't know what exactly slang they're using back in all of the medieval times and things, but we have a relatively good guess. And so whenever I see a fantasy novel where they're all speaking in the king's English, I'm just like, okay, sure, that doesn't make sense. But we move on. But I figured, why not slang? It's always existed. It'd be silly not to pretend it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Was the process of writing this kind of chill, or did you ever feel stressed out or writer's blocky or anything like that?
For the first book, no, I had the time of my life. I thought maybe 20 people were going to read it, and so I was mostly just writing it to make my friends laugh.
So were your friends reading as you're writing? Were you like slipping them chapters?
Oh yeah, and then whenever I would just like take a break for a few days, they're just like, "What are you doing? I need the next chapter. Get on it."
That's how you know you've got something. When people are like hounding you at your door or on your phone, like, I need words.
Right? Like
Honestly, it helps me so much.
that motivation. I remember it was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little longer. I saw George R. R. Martin at Balticon just chilling in an elevator, like not writing. Like if ever, I'm sure like whenever he's out in public and he's not writing, he must get comments. Anyway, we all know he's not writing.
No, he's not.
So did you think about like purposefully making things funny, or it was just like, I'm laughing at this? Like, how did you approach the humor in the books?
I was just making myself giggle because I'm a nerd. And so every now and then I'd put in a joke in there. I'm just like, oh my God, my friend is going to lose her mind at this. So long as I was giggling and laughing, and every now and then I'd get like a comment in the chat group, just like, Kim, what is wrong with you? This is so funny. And so whenever I got that, it's like, all right, clearly I'm on the right track, and just kept rolling.
I think that immediate feedback, and also kind of the idea of having a writer avatar, or like a reader avatar, rather. And you actually are writing for human beings that you know.
I think that really makes all the difference. Just like having a good group of people to just like share your joy with and give you a little needling to keep moving when you're stuck. That really helps.
That's fascinating, because a lot of time when I first started writing, I did use a lot of alpha and beta readers. And now I'm just like, no, let me just get to the end and then you can tell me what you think. But by the time I get to the end, I'm like, I really don't want to listen to you.
I don't want to change anything anymore.
Right. No, I love the feedback during, because then I can be like, all right, well, this doesn't work. Maybe this does. We'll see what this reaction gets.
And then your revision process, is that like, because as a pantser, is it like an intense revision, or do you find that by the time you get to the end, because you're kind of changing things up as you go, you don't have an intense revision?
I usually don't have big intense revisions because it takes me so long to get through the first draft. But my first draft usually ends up being more like a third or fourth draft, because I'm constantly going back and thinking of new things. Or I'll think of something like, oh, if I go back 3 chapters, I could tie this in later and do a little sneak peek. This is so much fun. And so then it just becomes like a much longer process to get my first draft out the door. I know in my heart, I should probably at least try to just get to the end. That way I'm not constantly struggling of what do I do next? But it's hard because I want to go back and fiddle around.
I think that people come to the process in many different ways. And I think when you're saying it's hard, I don't know that that's the best categorization of what you're doing. I feel like when you do that, when you go through and you cycle through, you're making it better. Like there are some people who have tried to just write all the way through, and then they get a draft that is just like, it's nothing. And then they just have to rewrite the whole thing. But if you have figured out, if I cycle this thing and I get to the end and it's great and my friends are laughing and giggling at me, I think you've got it.
That's a good point. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, because everyone's process is super different, and sometimes it changes. Like I have to get to the end, but then I also have intense revisions. It's intense all the way around. It's very painful. Every word is painful for me. But like, yeah, everyone is different, and people kind of feel pressure to write in a specific way, like, oh, do this, do that. But it's not like that. It's and someone else won't understand your process, and you probably don't understand other people's processes. But like,
fair,
yeah. Try to like release the guilt. I'm always on a mission to release all of my writer guilt and various other guilt.
That is such a good thing to get a hold on, because I swear I was like drowning in imposter syndrome the first 2 years of doing this. And it really cut into my writing time. And I wish I'd figured out how to pull myself out of it beforehand.
Yeah. Sometimes it's hard. You can't do it until you're in it. But like, because a lot of people deal with it their whole careers. But yeah, it can be very like paralyzing if that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Still working on that.
Same, honestly. But hey, we get better every day.
Right?
We absolutely do. So I think when we're in these fantasy and paranormal worlds, I think it allows us to talk about things happening in our world that it's kind of hard to talk about. That's why I love when I have a paranormal or a fantasy that also involves an interracial relationship, because I feel like you can talk about things that are just hard. to
Yeah.
talk about on this side. I don't know if you did that on purpose.
Yes.
Tell us a bit more about that. Like, why did you choose to have one? We have this really strong black brown heroine, and then we have this demon who is a different species than her, but he also looks different than her. And I thought that was amazing.
Thank you. I've always just loved interracial romances. I'm in an interracial romance myself. I am interracial. So, but yeah, I thought in a fantasy world, we're just like, well, why would I even bring attention to color if I don't have to? So everybody can just love everybody. It's all good. Nobody really cares if you have fangs, so long as you're cool, really. And plus, one pet peeve of mine is that when I go look up interracial romances, most of it is just like mafia, where it's not really interracial. And so I'm just like, no, let's do some actual interracial romances.
I think some people think that, oh, if you have a human and an elf, it's naturally interracial. And that doesn't always work.
That's not what we're talking about, and you know that.
Yeah, there's a lot of like disingenuousness there. But I mean, the other thing about the world that you created is that, you know, the demons are being persecuted to a certain degree. So like, I guess no spoilers, but yeah, there's this layer of persecution that, so you also have the species, but then there's that other layer where you can kind of talk about not only cultural differences, because they do come from different places and have different abilities and different cultures, but they've been downtrodden and they've been basically enslaved. So we want to talk about that? I don't know.
So this might be a bit dark, but when I first started writing this book, it was around the trial for George Floyd's murderer. And I was so angry. And I lived in Minneapolis at the time. And I was so angry at police and the way we were treated. I wanted to have that moment where Usha, who was raised to believe demons were this one thing, has a moment where she sees that she was wrong and that Fallon is a perfectly good human, just the same as her. Well, not human, but demon, but like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He was also a person. And I wanted her to have that immediate switch up to where I need to help fix everything because this is wrong. And just to be like, well, how hard was that? You saw something was wrong and you changed. It shouldn't be that difficult. And so that's where that came from.
Yeah.
See, that's the other thing. Like that I love about paranormal and fantasy romance or fantasy and paranormal books is that we can come to solutions. It feels so good.
Yeah. It feels so good to just be like, look, we can just be better people.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't take this huge, long journey of self-discovery and education and like, you know, crawling on your knees. You can feel like, oh, this is wrong. And I can change it. I love how you just said that. Yeah. That is so cool. So we can talk a little bit about publishing because both you and I started out completely indie and then had our series bought by traditional publishers. Can you talk about that experience? Like, how did that come about?
Well, when I first started doing this, I didn't think any publisher would actually take me seriously. I was writing silly fantasy rom-coms where everything is like has yeeted in the title and all that crazy stuff like that. So I decided to just like go indie, and thankfully I hit a chord with my readers really early on, and the series got popular. After that, I started getting contacted by publishers who'd be like, hey, would you want to work with us? Would you want to like bring the series to the forefront? And at the time, I was really struggling with keeping up with the demands of my readers. Like they wanted it translated into other languages. They wanted it available in bookstores. And I couldn't do that on my own because even though I was making a decent amount, not nearly enough to start paying for translations and things. So I teamed up with Joe Fletcher, who then teamed up with Orbit to bring the Mead Mishaps series traditional. But one thing I do regret and one thing I wish more authors knew is that when you start getting contacted by publishers, please send those emails around to agents so you can get someone to represent you. Because I didn't have someone to represent me the first time I signed that contract and ended up just getting it looked over by a literary lawyer, which was still good. She still helped me. But now that I have an agent, it's such a better experience because you have someone in your corner constantly fighting for you and what you want because they get paid when you get paid. And so it's in their best interest to make sure you have the best deal possible.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for our listeners on what to look for? One, in agents, and two, like in those publishing contracts that might be predatory?
I would say look what happens if the publisher goes under, like where do the rights go?
Oh my gosh.
Well,
Who
just
did that?
oh yeah, just making sure that you're protected should something happen to the publisher. Make sure their demands aren't too outrageous with how many books you have to sell before you get like the full amount. Like for example, a lot of the times it'll say like you'll get 7% for your first 10,000 copies, and then after that you'll get 10% or something like that. So just make sure it's not some outrageous number like you have to sell like 50,000 copies before you actually get the full percent. That's silly. That's ridiculous. And yeah, make sure you look at the clause of like when you can publish another book. Because sometimes they'll put clauses in there of like you can't compete within this window. But then the window is like a year long. And I'm like, well, that's ridiculous. That's silly. And then as far as agents, I would just say look up what they're looking for, see what other authors they work with. Like I noticed my agent, Courtney, works with Talia Hibbert, and I love Talia Hibbert. So I decided to shoot my shot and just emailed Talia, just like, hey, do you like your agent? Can we chat for a little bit? And thankfully, Talia was like, yeah, oh my God, I love Courtney. She's the best. And so, yeah, just ask around, really.
Yeah, most authors, well, many authors are super friendly, especially if you get those emails like trying to ask about your agent or even your editor. I've talked to people about the various editors I've worked with who are considering working with those editors because different publishing houses and different editors within publishing houses can give you very different experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So like having that social proof can be super helpful.
How was that for that transition from indie to hybrid for you? Was it similar?
There was definitely some hiccups because I had gotten so used to controlling every aspect of my author career.
Yeah.
And so when I would just start agreeing to things and doing things, my editors at my publisher would be like, hey, you gotta check with us before you start doing that kind of stuff. I'm like, what do you mean? I can't just do all these signings and stuff at a bookstore and like make it exclusive. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. I should probably ask before. Yeah, because I am overzealous, and when I see something fun, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. But yeah, so just sort of sharing the power a bit was a bit weird for me. And the fact that I wasn't able to set my prices or have full control over the cover, which thankfully they got on board eventually, but I did. That was like the one time where my hackles were raised, just like, no, we're doing it this way. And thankfully with my newer contracts, now that my agent knows I like to have a lot of creative control with the cover and how things look, that was able to be worked into my contract of like, hey, you can't just give me a cover and be like, here you go. I'm going to see that shit. And thankfully with my Berkeley contract for my Aliens book, they just went ahead and hired Mike Pape to do the cover at my request. And he's the same person that redid the covers for the Mead Mishaps series. I love his style, love working with him. So I'm super excited to see the final version of the Alien cover.
So the Aliens is new. This is what's coming out next?
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us any sneak peek preview about what we're going to be in for?
Well, I love alien romance. Ruby Dixon, I was her fan for years. And so I decided, I need a break from fantasy. We're going to go to outer space for a while. But I also, this is totally random, but I also really love Meerkat Manor and a bunch of Animal Planet shows. So while I was watching Meerkat Manor, I was just like, wouldn't it be so funny if like the animal researcher that's studying these things gets abducted by aliens and gets put into like a conservation ship to try and like increase the breeding population of this dying alien species. So she becomes the meerkat. But more than that, I want a talking lion. So I made this race of aliens called the Bubon that basically look like little Furbies, like little owl alien dudes. And basically they had an oil spill in space and they ruined this planet with like a sentient bee species. And due to their laws, they have to basically fix it and help conserve the environment. So they create a conservation planet, move what animals they can save to this planet. But whoopsie, they fucked up and didn't take any of the women. So they need to find a compatible replacement. Surprise, surprise, it's Earth women. So a bunch of girls get taken. But I decided like, well, if the aliens don't want to do any harm to this current planet, they should probably only take the women that were like dying or about to die. So I gave them like a time displacement machine and only picked up women that were literally seconds away from death. And the animal researcher gets attacked by a lion and bit in the neck. So she and the lion both get zipped up. And because I needed a way for them to communicate, there's also like a slime that gives you speaking powers or whatever. So yeah, now she and the lion can talk, as well as all the other aliens, and it's just this big shenanigan of trying to figure out how to survive on this conservation planet with these two dudes who are now apparently her alien husbands that she didn't agree to. And also there's dinosaurs, because
of course.
Not.
I know it sounds crazy, but it'll make sense when you read it.
Perfect.
But the aliens kept cutting corners because they just did not have the funding to like do like a full research opportunity. But they're like, well, we have to make sure this planet is compatible for both humans and the Senkato. And so they're just like, well, there's a bunch of buildings here with like some Earth DNA. Let's just like grab shit from there. And like, that's the animals we're going to use. And of course, it was like a dinosaur museum. So she's like, what in the actual fuck? What is wrong with y'all? And they're just like, isn't this stuff from your planet? And she's like, not the same time period.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Coming soon to an e-reader bookstore near you, readers.
February 2025.
Oh man,
I'm sorry. It takes so much longer.
it does.
It'll fly by. It'll fly by.
I
Oh
hope
my
so.
God.
I literally just sent off the edits for it like a couple of days ago. So I'm just like, yes, I'm finally done. Now I can get back to working on something else.
Wow. I still have to recover from that description. When you took Mead Mishaps to orbit, did they ask for any edits? Did you have to do another revision?
No, I was surprised at that. They're just like, yep, this looks fine. I was like, oh, okay.
That is cool. That is definitely a difference from our experiences, because I had to do a big edit when I took my series. The other thing was I had to take mine off sale for like a year. Like when it was indie, there was 2 books out that were indie when I sold it, which was annoying. And fighting for covers, that's the other thing I wanted to say. Like, I've had to fight for every cover that has basically a Black woman on it. There's always something that has to happen. And it's like having that in your contract is a very good idea if you can negotiate that, to have some level of, I mean, even if you don't, especially if there's people of color, or if I'm like, okay, this character who is supposed to be dark-skinned is objectively not dark-skinned. We cannot do that. We have to change this.
Right.
But like, yeah. Other things, yeah, it's very annoying not to have that creative control for something as important as the cover.
I think what really helped is that I had a built-in fan base that would go insane on TikTok if they didn't get what they wanted. So I'm just like, okay, yeah, you could give me a really crappy cover, but you're going to be answering to them because I don't control them. So good luck with that.
Yeah, you can like weaponize, in a good way.
Right.
There's
I
bad
love
ways
my
to-
readers. They're the best.
Right. So are there do you do kind of reader outreach, or how do you have your relationship with your readers? Are there specific things that you do?
Well, when I first started doing this, it was a lot easier to manage because it was like a small group of people that would basically just like make TikToks and share everything. So I would just like chat with them on a personal level. We used to meet up on Discord and just shoot the shit and watch movies. And so it was nice because I had joined a lot of reader Discords where I could see what they were reading, what kind of books they were into, and of course add them to my TBR too. And it became like sort of just like a small online friendship. And it was like a friendly community where we could just chat and do whatever. But as I've gotten bigger, I've sort of taken a step back and sort of just like keep them updated, still like share what I'm reading, see what they're doing, and just, still be a part of the community, but like further back a little bit.
Cool. Yeah. So we're really excited about this alien zoological
Very excited.
romance themes. I think, yeah, that's going to be a hit. It does sound insane, but it also sounds wonderful. And because you're you, we trust you, because we didn't know we needed the Mead Mishaps, and we absolutely did. So we didn't know we needed this, but we absolutely do.
I'm still shocked Berkeley bought that thing because I wrote the most unhinged synopsis. Because again, I was just like, no one's going to take this seriously. Let's do what I want. And then my agent was like, oh yeah, Berkeley wants it. I'm just like, what? Are you sure?
There's something to be said about like authenticity. There's a lot of like, okay, right to market, which is fair. But at the same time, when you do exactly what you want to do and you love it and it's wild and people haven't seen it before, there's such an opportunity there for it to be like, yeah, you don't know that you need these things, but you like all of these things separately. I'm going to put them together and show you that you really do want it. So now is the time where we ask about everyday magic. Has there been any everyday magic in your life, Kim, that you would like to share with us?
Yes, I spoke to ghosts last weekend and it was great. So My sisters and I took a trip to Savannah, Georgia, and we love the paranormal. We love ghost stories, a lot of the good stuff. So we decided to do the paranormal investigation tour at the Sorrell house. And basically, what happens there is that the tour guide will basically take you through the house, explain the ghosts they have, and like how to use the tools. Like we had like the metal rods and this pendulum that swings around, so you can ask the ghost questions, yes or no. And then she just leaves, and then you're alone in the house in the dark with all the ghosts because it was like 11 p.m. at night. And I know it sounds scary, but we're like, you know what? We've never done something like this before. We're gonna try it. And it was us and another couple that was there, and we got separated. So basically, there's the main house, there's the servants' quarters, and like the courtyard. So sometimes you're in the house with no one else but your own group. And we decided to start off in the basement because we're insane. And the doctor was down there. We wanted to ask the doctor questions. Yes. The basement had 3 ghosts. The doctor who like worked on war patients and all that other good stuff. This little girl named Sarah, and who they called the Shadow Man, which is apparently just like the old security guard whose name was John. And so we're in the basement. I pick up the rods and go into the doctor's office and like, hey, is the doctor here? And one of the rods swings around and taps my shoulder. And basically both rods like swing around. So I turn around and the rods go perfectly straight. And so I asked again, is the doctor here? And the rods cross, yes. And so we're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And so we're like asking him questions like, did he like his job? We actually ran out of questions very fast because we did not expect anyone to answer. So we bid the doctor farewell, walked over to John, who is known for like walking across as like a shadow figure on the wall. John had a lot of opinions about music and apparently does not like Bach or Beyonce, which we thought was hilarious. So we talked to John for a while, then went to the servants' quarters. And this is where it was really funny because the tour guide that brought us in there was like, okay, so real quick, the ghosts don't really like it when you ask them how they died because everybody asked that question and they're bored of it. So if you want them to come out and start talking to you, make it funny for them, like be vivacious, make it look like you want to have fun. And actually, my sisters and I were just like joking around and playfully making fun of each other. And at one point, my little sister goes, hey, ghost, is my older sister Kim a bitch? And so the rods cross, no. I'm like, the ghosts are on my side, take that. And so we just start bickering and like using the ghosts to answer our questions and insult each other. And yeah, more and more of them came out and found out they actually don't like how they redid the servants' quarters. They want it redecorated into like boho chic. And I thought, like, this is hilarious. These ghosts have so many opinions. And then when the tour ended, we kind of felt bad because apparently none of the ghosts talked to the other couple. They were all just like following us around the house. But what was really cool is that when we got to the main house, Mr. Sorrell, like the dude who like owned the whole house, didn't really want to talk. So we were just like sitting in his study, watching the videos and giggling about what happened in the basement in the servants' quarters. Then we hear the piano play in the other room. So we're just like, oh, maybe he actually wants to talk. And so my sisters run over there. I grab the rods, but before I can even get over there, my little sister looked into this obsidian ball thing and apparently saw the dude sitting by the piano. And she's like, oh crap, I can see him. So she hands my older sister the ball and she looks into it and sees another woman, which was his wife, like right behind her. So Nicole screams, like drops the ball and just bolts out of there. I don't want to look in the ball because apparently it was scary. So we all just like ran out screaming. That was enough. We had enough. So then we got staged down and we left. But it was so much fun.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know what to say to any of them. I've been to Savannah, but I've been to the beach.
No, we went looking for trouble.
And you found it.
We did, but they were so nice.
Right? At least didn't seem that they were trying to be scary. It was
no.
We were just chilling with y'all. You were guests chilling in their house.
We played them Beethoven. They had a great time.
That is fantastic. That is true everyday magic. Inez, do you have any everyday magic that
Nothing
you
like that?
I think I've broken this.
I'm
You broke
I'm in the
brain.
midst of magic. I'm in that wonderful place of finishing energy where I'm 2 chapters and an epilogue away from finishing a book, and it's all just coming together. And even though it's always every single time, like I write with Leslie almost every weekday morning. And when I get to the dark moment, you can just see it on my face. You can see it. Like, I'm not having fun in this author world right now. But as soon as I get past the dark moment, it all just falls into place and makes sense for me. And that's where I am. And tomorrow, I should be finished the first draft of this book. And
Woohoo!
That's so exciting.
Yes, we'll have to celebrate.
by going and laying down and taking a nap.
Naps are celebration. The celebratory
feel
nap
that.
is a real thing.
Home folk celebration.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay home and celebrate.
Stay home. What about you, Les?
My Everyday Magic is the book that I have been working on for this whole year, since January, is finally on submission to my editor. So this
Yay!
is the book that was like 10 years in the making. I first started working on it actually 11 years ago now. And I finally got back to it, wrote a proposal, wrote the first, like, I don't know, 100 pages or so, and it's off to the editor. So,
And it's good.
thank you. We are celebrating all of the finishing energy.
I love that.
Yay.
Yay. So, guys, we hope there's some finishing energy going on in your world. And we want to thank you so much for joining us today. And let us know what you think. You can leave a comment on YouTube with your thoughts on this amazing episode. You can share this episode with a friend who loves romance. And please don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
And you can always check out our book schedule on our website as we continue reading Nalini Singh's Side Changeling series. We also have on the website show notes so you can find all of Kim's books as well. And that's inkandmagic.net. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.